the Primitive Patterns Podcast. It's time to live your mystery. All right, boys, here we go. I don't know what episode this is, not that it matters, but look at this. We got the boys on the pod today. Everybody's here. Kind of had the idea to talk a little bit today about hierarchy of needs for athletes. Yeah. Or kind of like, doesn't necessarily have to go that direction, but what the boys think, like whether it's things that you think athletes definitely need or things that you shouldn't focus on, things that you see in the industry of athletes doing that you may agree or disagree with, just like in your opinion when it comes to helping an athlete, especially let's call it younger athletes. Like we're not talking about guys in their prime in their 30s. Like let's talk about guys that are up and coming, people that we would train, typically the younger population, and probably more specifically like team sport athletes. Not like, for sure, not like none of us are track and field coaches. So I would say, yeah, tailor it to more of a team sport. But I mean, you hear this all the time. This would be my first opinion on it, is like you train the human first. It's like the human comes first before thinking about the athlete. And I think one thing that we could agree on, and in my opinion, it would be very high up there in the hierarchy of what an athlete needs to be successful, not only in their sport, but in life, would be having a toolbox of things that can help. And I would say an internal toolbox of how to not mitigate stress, but tolerate and manage it, because it's going to be inevitable that you're going to come across stress, and probably a shit ton of it if you're a high performing athlete. And when I say internal toolbox, what I mean by that is like, I'm not talking about a Theragun or a sauna or an ice bath or compression pants. I'm talking, how do you feel your body? Are you aware of your patterns of sleep? And do you consciously make an effort to have quality sleeping patterns on a daily basis? Do you make time to have some quiet, whether it's like hiking, or if you're into meditation, having a toolbox within yourself that can help you manage all the stress that comes along with being an athlete. Because especially if we're talking about that younger population, chances are they probably deal with work, school, athletics, family, list goes on. Yeah, I think you hear people in the industry talk about it. Like I think Brian McKenzie and Paul Chek both talk about it, but earning your workout, like earning your ability to train, I think that is like taken to another level when you consider an athlete. Like I think when athletes aren't like, they need to have the utmost focus on the things that you're talking about. It's like the sleep, the nutrition, the stress management, everything like that, hydration. Whereas like the average Joe can kind of just like, even if he's not fully dialed into those things, he can still train and maybe get positive benefits out of it, not a ton of negatives. Whereas if you're an athlete and you're not super focused on your sleep, your nutrition, plus you're playing your sport, which is taking up a lot of energy and causing a lot of stress on the body, and then you're trying to go into the gym and like better your performance by getting stronger, more powerful like that. Like if anything, you're just going to break down your body in the gym and make your play on the field, on the ice, on the court, whatever it is, probably suffer. So yeah, I think kind of going on that, like I think earning your workout as an athlete is huge. I'll say one quick thing, because I know the boys probably want to chime in, is it's especially important during the off season, right? Because like in season, if you think about a hockey player, I mean, I've never played high level hockey, so I didn't have the schedule that these guys had. I barely played low level hockey, but like, these guys aren't getting out of the rink till 10, 11 p.m. Their sleep schedule is fucked. They're on the road. Their eating patterns are probably fucked. So when you have the opportunity, like in a 4-month, 5-month or less off season, probably not a bad idea to make that a priority.
Yeah, I think we can all agree, like the foundational levels of health is going to be most important on the human side of things, especially when you're dealing with like 15 to 18 year olds, because like you said, the schedule isn't dictated by them. So learning to manage like why you're doing, when you're doing it, how you're doing it, especially on the nutrition, sleep, those types of things. But it's not only them, it's got to be like a full circle in the household. Like obviously the parents have a huge influence on what's going on at home. So when you are training or practicing the amount that kids that age practice now, a lot of the stuff in the gym is going to be left to like the last priority, right? Yeah. But having that foundation and being able to educate kids, especially at a young age, because it's usually not the first thing they care about, is like why they're eating, when they're eating, and what they're eating. But if you can get that mentality into an athlete at a young age, that's just going to continue to grow as you get older. And if you're educated on knowing how to be flexible with your weekly plan, and I think that's the biggest thing we take for granted is like trainers and knowing how to manage your own stress is, well, I know I'm training hard today. That's why I'm fueling in this certain way. And that decision's like second nature to us, but a lot of people wouldn't have that.
They have no fucking clue.
No fucking clue.
No idea. And like you were saying, at a young age, there's so many things that are like out of your control, like your game schedule.
Yeah.
Like you might have an away game. You might not get home till 2 a.m. because you have a 2-hour bus ride after the game. You might be living with a billet family that just like has no idea about nutrition.
Yeah.
So like your meals are just kind of shit. And you can't be like,
Or you're-
hey, Nancy, I'll take the organic broccoli and the fucking grass-fed beef from the local farmer. Yeah. Can you buy some good bone broth instead of the beefaroni that you've been buying? Like,
or you're sitting in math class
yeah,
in high school from like 9 to 6.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're like, what are you going to do? Go down to the calf, grab a slice of pizza?
Yeah.
Like, because all your buddies are, and your trainer and your coach is like, oh no, you got to eat your packed lunch.
Yeah.
You're like, well,
but like
all my buddies are grabbing 3 za at lunch. So.
And like we're saying, that's why it's so important for the athlete to actually have an understanding of those things, because if they don't, a lot of the time as a young athlete, you're just thrown into a situation. So if you don't know the right way to go about things and when you maybe shouldn't be doing things like sleeping, what you should be eating, recovery, hydration, and you just kind of get thrown into a situation, you could easily just get thrown into some bad habits and patterns because you just don't know any better.
Yeah, for sure.
So what about more so on the like on the training side of things? Because I think we can all agree, like the lifestyle habits that you have as like a young athlete growing up are obviously super important. But what about from a training perspective? Like, what are some things that population of like 15 to 19 years old? What are some of the big ticket items that you think would be most beneficial for most team sport athletes? Go ahead.
Yeah, let me go. One of the big things that comes into my head is the idea of avoiding early specialization. So maybe not in like the 15 to 18 plus category, because that kind of is the age group where they are starting to specialize, but in the younger categories, so like 10, 12, 13 to 15, playing a variety of sports. So when we want to talk about mitigating the risk of particularly like overuse injuries, like if you're specializing early, let's take a baseball player, for example. If you're 12 years old and you're already pitching, 100 to 200 innings a year and you're only 12, like you still got so much development to go through from 12 to 18. And your risk of, for example, like Tommy John or tearing a UCL just goes through the roof versus if you just maybe pitched like 25 to 50 innings a year and played soccer or hockey, you know what I mean? Like you just had a variety of sort of stresses you had to deal with in a sporting context, not just whipping your arm thousands of times.
Yeah, I think that could be a good point for like, if there's any parents listening to the podcast, to like, some parents think that their kid is going to the show. Some parents are like, oh, my kid's lighting up AAA or whatever baseball or basketball league they're in. They're like lighting it up. So, okay, in the summertime, instead of having an off season where I'm going to put them in soccer instead, it's just going to be hockey camp, like summer league. It's like, well, if your kid is that young to really, like you said, just like build general athletic qualities that maybe they'll find in a different sport and not come across those overuse injuries so much is actually more beneficial. So even though you may think like, oh, having them not play the sport that they're exceeding in for a couple of months is going to like, you may think it's going to hurt their development. In the long run, it's actually going to do wonders for sure.
Especially at that young of an age.
Yeah.
Like I feel like all the best athletes, we could probably attest to it in our classes in like grade 7, 8, 9, were just kids that were able to play anything. It wasn't necessarily that they were the most talented in each sport, but like they could
cross country, volleyball, soccer, hockey, you name it. You know who was a big proponent of that, if you guys remember? Can you take a guess? No, you don't remember? Don Cherry. Remember Don Cherry always used to talk about that? Multi-sport athletes. This guy plays soccer in the summer. Colton Orr played a goalie as a soccer goalie. Like even Team Ontario or something. Yeah.
Thinking of just like physical. I was thinking about this the other day. Like for us growing up, like just the amount of more activity we had because we didn't, like I was telling someone the other day, I didn't have internet till like grade 9.
Yeah.
Like, and it was dial up. So it was shit quality. So it's like, why would I spend all day, inside on the internet? And if you had a community of guys, like I was lucky to have like outside biking, skateboarding, paintballing, all that stuff is not a specific sport, I guess, in and of itself, but it built general qualities that would help me in my other team sports.
Yeah. And it just keeps you away from like Paul Check talks about it all the time. He's kind of like, why would you run long distances? Like anything that's that repetitive, you're going to get imbalances and you're going to have overuse injuries. So it's like, you can apply that to any sport. Like running is a very like intense example of like such a repetitive nature of like a sport that you can do. Because at least in other sports, like team sports, there's variability in like the way the game is like played. But yeah. And you can also talk about like general like GPP from the standpoint of like how we have been saying be a multi-sport athlete when you're young. So you can look at it from that lens. But then also like in the gym, you know, there's probably a bunch of like hockey parents out there or whatever sport your kid plays. The parent probably has Instagram. And if they're passionate about their kid playing that sport, they probably see all these drills that coaches are trying to make the drill look similar to the pattern in the sport. And you can also look at specialization from that standpoint too and be like, general physical preparation. The gym is there to build, depending on the age, but really any age, power, speed, mobility, flexibility, like those general qualities of fitness, right? And so you can look at it from a perspective in the gym too. Don't get so specific, or don't think you need to get so specific, especially with those younger ages, but really with any age, with being too picky about exercise selection.
Yeah, you see sports specificity taken to the point where
that's the first thing Luke said.
Tier 4. Sports specificity, it gets taken to the point where people try to make the movement in the gym they're trying to do look so much like their fucking sport that it's not training any other quality. It's not training the sport quality at all.
No.
It's not training strength, power, endurance, coordination, any of that shit. It's just a fucking chaotic mess of a movement.
Yeah, it's just something that like looks cool, that'll get likes, and like people that have no idea about strength and conditioning, like the athletes, like not that all athletes have no idea, but a lot of them don't. They would see a video like that and be like, oh, I gotta buy this guy's program. Like you see, like there's this one trainer on Instagram, I don't even know his name, and I wouldn't name drop it anyways, but every single fucking exercise that he does.
Real Game Athletics?
No, well, every single, this guy's like specific to hockey and he's got a ton of followers, and every single exercise
Gary
this guy
Roberts?
does. No, he's a beauty.
Gary's a beauty. Don't ever talk down about Gary Roberts again.
This guy's exercises, every single one looks like he's on ice. Like he's just like using sliders and like going back and
dancing
forth.
on a Bosu ball and shit.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, you think he maybe got enough of that? Well, first of all, that's not the stimulus that he's getting on the ice. And even if it was close, do you not think he got it? He just played 50 games.
Yeah.
He just played however many games he just played. He's probably sore. He's probably beat up. Like maybe focus on the complete opposite. You know, like, okay, what did you just do over the last 6 months in your sport? What did it demand of you? Okay, let's do the opposite of that for a few months.
Yeah, like what you're not getting from your sport, let's do that in the weight room. Yeah. That's what it's for. Also, when they take the sports when they try to frame it as like an injury, so they do it for like performance. They try to look at it through that perspective. But if you try to frame it as like an injury prevention strategy, that's even fucking dumber. Because if you want to prevent injuries, why would you not just give them the qualities that they're missing from their sport? Just give them traditional strength training and then let them play their sport. Give them the actual exposure to their sport that they need in order to become familiar with the awkward positions the sport's going to put you in, so you can actually mitigate injury risks.
I mean, that's like one thing that when we were at Gary Roberts doing our internship, that's one thing that those guys actually did so fucking well, was all their workouts in the gym. Nothing was like, there was some part of me that thought I was going to go there and it was going to be a lot of sports specific shit.
Especially at the time, like where we were at
younger,
with,
like we hadn't like really been in the industry much at all at that point.
It's the highest level athletes. So when you haven't been exposed to that environment, you just think, okay, they're the best athletes. They must be doing the most complex shit.
Exactly. Their workouts were just like your Bulgarians, your back squats, your deadlifts, your single arm rowing. There was no reinventing the wheel going on there. And then almost every single day after their workout, the trainers actually, they worked them hard, but also made sure that we didn't push them so hard that, because they all skated after. It was like you hit your workout, you maybe eat something, you chill for a bit, boom, you're on the ice. So it's like, we're going to work on the general qualities while you're in the gym, and then we'll do the sport specific shit when you're actually playing the sport. So those guys nailed that one for sure. Yeah. And at the time, I almost didn't even, like I said, with where we were at, I almost thought like, this is fucking nuts that like he's doing essentially the movements that I already know about. I found out, like, you know, I was so stoked to have the opportunity with that internship. And then it's like, they're just doing the same shit that everybody else is doing. I still kind of make jokes with people. Like I'll run people through a warm up and I'll just be like, you just did Connor McDavid's warm up. Yeah. You know, like I'll be running like Susan through a 10-minute linear warm up with a bit of sled work. And I'll be like, yeah, with a med ball throw. Yeah. You just did Connor McDavid's warm up. Like, no way. And like, it's kind of funny because in your head, you're like, yeah, but so does everybody else. Yeah.
That is the one thing that people like, it's hard for them to accept that.
Oh yeah.
Like, especially back to like the youth age and like competitive, they're getting into more like high performance scenarios like AAA, maybe they're going to the OHL, and they expect that there's like some new revolutionary pro level training, but it's really just the same stuff done over a span of years. And I know it's a drum that's been beaten like hand in hand again, but like kids who don't train during the season, especially in that age group we're talking about, lose so much development because they just focus on their sport and then they take those months off from being in the gym.
Yeah.
And that's a huge detriment to, I think, their development overall.
Yeah, that's another good point too, is like in terms of development from one year to the next, like even though the season, it can be like grueling, especially depending on what level you're playing, no matter the sport, like you have to make sure that you are at least maintaining the qualities that you acquired in the off season, or else you're never going to stack. It's always going to be, you get stronger, maybe a little bit faster in the off season, and then you play your sport and you flatline. And as your body fatigues throughout the season, it starts to go down. And now you're starting the next off season kind of where you started the last one. So it's like, as long as you can go really high quality workout program in the off season, done right, maintain throughout the season, now you're starting where you finished the last off. And even if it's not full maintenance, because that's probably really hard to do as well, but it is possible. You can maintain making it a priority and trying your best, at least getting close. Yeah.
Keeping it as close as you can without, obviously detrimenting to the sport, I think is ideal.
Yeah.
One thing I find weird on the topic.
Oh, what's up, Luker?
What's up, buddy?
Holy fuck, I didn't see you there.
Of development that I find weird is like, how much of a game, or how much do we hear coaches or people say like, oh, half the game's mental. But then when you have young athletes, for the most part, it's like, we're not equipping them with any tools really to handle stress, to go into a game with a good mindset. Like a simple example, a lot of young players, say you're 16, 17, they're going to measure their improvement by, did I score? Did I get an assist? It's like, you could eat like shit, train like shit, be a complete moron, still go out and score 2 goals. But if you're looking at like, okay, did I train? Did I treat myself good as far as rest and recovery? Did I do all the things that mentally put me in a good place? Okay, I went out, maybe I didn't score this game, but I look at the list of things from the week and I'm like, still a great week.
Yeah.
It's just having athletes more tools to like cultivate confidence, not just from how did I perform in the game? Because at the end of the day, if you look at it over like the course of a career or a season, I guarantee if you look back at the weeks where you're stacking all those good habits, you're probably like, oh, there was a huge increase in performance. But if you look at the one-off game, you might be like, I did all the right things and nothing happened.
Yeah.
So just teaching guys tools so they can gain confidence, not just from performance, because I think that can be a really slippery slope.
Mm-hmm. That's just like, people harp on that all the time in professional sports. Is just maturity and saying, oh, this player is like matured. And it's like, okay, well, from the age of 20, when they had played like maybe their rookie season in the league, to the age of 25, did their skill actually get that much better? Like, did they get much faster? Like, did their stick handling get a lot better? Did their shot get that much better? Probably not. But their maturity, obviously that also comes with just like understanding how to play in whatever league you're playing in. But also you're just maturing as an individual, which means you're probably at a point where you are stacking good habits. And you're seeing what the top guys at the top level, how they have those good habits and they stack them day to day to day to day, and they don't take a day off. That's definitely one of the biggest drivers in just bettering your performance from year to year.
Yeah, and I just think though it could be a bigger focus, especially for younger players.
Yeah,
just to make it a priority from day one.
Mm-hmm. All right, boys, good pod. That was I think episode 4 wrapped up. So amazing talk. We'll see you boys on the next one.
Thanks for having me on, fellas. My debut.
Yeah. And Cole's debut.
Yeah,
there we go.
The podcast 2.0. So yeah, here we go. See you, boys.